Over the many years, you've become a successful executive. You've taken challenges. You've found great mentors. When you look back over the last 30 years or so, what are the sort of 2 or 3 or 4 kind of fundamental things you did to build your career?
Tough. I mean, I don't think I can give a plan. I think nobody who says it's got a plan doesn't really work. But I think there are a couple of things that are very important. First is be honest to yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror and really acknowledge what you really care. In my case, was what were the things that were truly important to myself. One was knowledge. I'm very curious. So, and the second one, I felt that I could only obtain it or accumulate knowledge through experiences. So right from the beginning, I felt I want to be exposed to many experiences and as rich as I could to challenge me and to learn. So that was very important. So for me, what helped was what are the key fundamental things that you really, really care. And those things, of course, do evolve over time as you age, without a doubt. So it was about investing time with yourself, thinking about who you are, what you want, what matters. The second is be clear about where you're heading. I mean, I used to say when I would interview people, what's your story? So where you're coming from, where you're going. Lots of people have some idea about where they're coming from, not entirely, or at least try to, for whatever reason, either not pay attention to it. I mean, we are a byproduct of where we're coming from. But more importantly than where we're coming from is where you're heading to.
Right.
I mean, what do you want? What's going to be your story at the end of an 80-year cycle?
At some point, you decided it's my turn. I want the corner office. I want to be CEO. And you were the CFO of the largest private global agribusiness in the world. And you returned to your homeland to be a CEO at Marfrig. What were some of the sort of professional thoughts about it's my turn, I want to be in charge? Or maybe it was different than that.
Yeah, I mean, I basically joined a company that needed a lot of help, both strategically and also financially. And I felt I could actually bring a number of experiences I had had throughout my career to bear to a local company in Brazil that basically was a result of 42, 43 acquisitions globally. I mean, 2/3 of Marfrig assets are outside of Brazil. 2/3 of Marfrig employees speak English, not Portuguese. So I felt, being a CEO of a company that has basically, it's a young company with all the inefficiencies and imperfections of a young company, if I could add a number of attributes I learned throughout my career with absolutely outstanding, great companies, I thought that was a good way to serve back my country and 25,000 people the company employs. So that was one. It was less about the power of the pen. I think as you grow older, I mean, we know it exists, it's fascinating, but I think one of the greatest things I learned, more importantly than being a hero, is to be human. So I think particularly as you move into that corner office, the first thing that I really spend time thinking is your world doesn't change because from now on you're absolutely serving 45,000 employees.
It's interesting to hear you talk about serving 45,000 employees. Harry Truman suggested that after he'd been president a while that the problem with Washington was that nobody listened to him. Mm-hmm. How does a CEO, as a servant leader, work through others to get things done? Because in this day and age, there's no sending out emails to get things done, right?
No. Candor, Pat. I think we have sanitized human relations to a degree that it's not even fun. They're not human anymore. Mm-hmm. I think you've got to bring humanity back to the way you interact and you lead people. You've got to tell them how you see things. Mm-hmm. I don't like the word brutal reality or brutal honesty. Honesty doesn't have to be brutal, just needs to be honest. Mm-hmm. And I think it's bringing honesty back to human relations that it can actually make people move either way. They remain committed and engaged, or they move out because they don't feel part.
Earlier you talked about a balanced life, home and work, family and work. How have you achieved balance in that you've been a high performer for 30 years. You're obviously a well-rounded individual despite your high performance.
I think what works for me is that in work I find leisure and in leisure I find work. So I think they're pretty much interchangeable. And I think as long as you have a supporting family that feels comfortable in that sort of environment, I think that works. I don't believe in boxing your environments, in where you say this is work and this is family. I think when you start getting to that sort of division, artificial boundary, I think you get in trouble because you can't sustain that. The families have to understand that those two things are absolutely interchangeable. So you can't just, okay, now it's work, which means I'm not having fun.
Right.
And now it's leisure, I am having fun. No,
Right.
these things are interchangeable.
Yeah. What's next? I mean, you're pretty young. You're chairman of this terrific bank in Brazil. You've just joined Delta Airlines, a global market leader. What do you got? What do you got left to do here, Sergio?
I don't know. I mean, it's life tends to take you in so many different directions. So I've been very blessed with a number of great leaders that really have helped me. So first of thing is realizing that I got to where I got because I got a lot of help. So making sure that I remain attentive to people who deserve to be helped. And I will certainly do that. The second one is I think being a Brazilian, call it one of the large emerging economies, I think sometimes I can offer different points of view. I think I have a diverse background that can probably be very useful to a number of companies as they think about the world differently. I think the world order has been changed. I mean, that's for real. We're not gonna go back to where we were. I mean, the world has become a lot more complex. And whether we're Brazilians, Russians, Mexicans, Indians, and Chinese, I think we have a seat at the table today that, provided that it's used in a constructive manner, can really help the so-called more established, developed world.
Speaking of a changing world order, when will the United States win a World Cup?
Well, I think you're pretty close to it. I mean, this is a nation that when you put your minds to get it accomplished, I mean, it's not going to take a long, long time. It's just a question when the U.S. decides to be the world champion, and then you will be the world champion.